The morning sun cast long shadows through the purple trees of Verdi as Jack made his daily patrol. His boots crunched on the blue-tinted grass, each step careful and measured. After 5 years as a ranger on this frontier world, he knew that careless steps could wake the burrowing snappers that lived beneath the surface. A flash in the sky caught his attention. Something bright was falling through the morning clouds, leaving a trail of smoke and sparks. Jack pulled his old binoculars from his belt and tracked the object. It wasn't a meteor. The path was too controlled, too shallow. This was a ship, or at least part of one. "Control, this is Ranger Jack." He spoke into his comm unit. "We've got an object entering atmosphere in Sector 7. Looks like a crash incoming." Only static answered him. He checked his device and frowned at the dead screen. Something was blocking communications. The object crashed 3 miles ahead, sending a plume of dust into the sky. Jack checked his rifle's power cell and started moving. If someone was alive in there, they wouldn't stay that way for long. Verdi's predators always investigated loud noises. He jogged through the forest, staying under the cover of the purple canopy. The local wildlife scattered at his approach. Floating gas bags that normally drifted between trees shot up into the branches, and ground crawlers burrowed into their holes. They knew what was coming. The crash would attract the bigger hunters. After 20 minutes of careful movement, Jack reached the crash site. The object was smaller than he expected. An escape pod, not a ship. Its silver surface was scored and burnt, but the design was like nothing he'd seen before. The pod had carved a long trench through the blue grass, ending at the base of a massive purple tree. A soft glow pulsed from inside the pod through a cracked viewport. Jack approached carefully, rifle ready. The local predators would arrive soon. Already, he could hear the distant cry of a starwing, one of Verdi's largest flying hunters. The pod's hatch had buckled in the crash. Jack wedged his survival knife into the gap and put his weight into it. With a screech of protesting metal, the hatch popped open. Inside, Jack found something that made him catch his breath. A creature made of crystal lay curled in the pod's cushioned interior. Its form was roughly humanoid, but its body was composed of translucent crystals that pulsed with inner light. Parts of its crystalline structure were cracked and damaged. The creature's glow flickered weakly as it turned what seemed to be its head toward him. Light patterns danced across its surface in complex patterns. Jack had heard stories of the Luminates, a peaceful species of crystalline beings, but he'd never seen one in person. They rarely ventured to frontier worlds like Verdi. A loud screech from above broke the moment. A starwing circled overhead, its 40-foot wingspan casting a shadow over the crash site. The creature's cry would attract every predator within miles. The Luminite's lights pulsed faster, creating patterns that Jack guessed showed fear. It tried to move but stopped, more cracks appearing in its damaged crystal body. Jack made a quick decision. "Don't move," he said, hoping it could understand him. "I'm here to help." He reached slowly into the pod. The crystalline being's light dimmed, but it didn't resist as he carefully lifted it out. It was lighter than he expected, maybe 40 pounds, and its surface was warm to the touch. Another screech, closer now, and Jack heard the heavy footsteps of something big moving through the forest, probably a bladeback, drawn by the starwing's cries. He needed to move fast. "Hold on," he told the Luminate, cradling it carefully against his chest. "This is going to be a rough ride." The creature's lights pulsed once, slowly, almost like a nod. Jack took that as agreement and started moving away from the crash site, staying under the cover of the trees. The starwing screamed again, and something roared in response from the forest. Jack checked his rifle's charge one more time. His ranger station was 15 miles away. Between here and there was some of the most dangerous territory on Verdi, and he was carrying an injured alien that seemed to glow like a beacon. The morning had definitely taken an interesting turn. As he moved carefully through the underbrush, the Luminite's glow steadied, matching his walking rhythm. Maybe it was just his imagination, but its light seemed to grow a little stronger, a little more confident. The hunt was on, and Jack had become a protector. Now he just had to live up to that role. Jack moved through the forest as quietly as he could, but carrying the injured Luminate made stealth difficult. Its crystal body glowed with a soft light that no amount of cover could fully hide. Every few steps, he heard the heavy footfalls of predators moving parallel to their path through the dense purple trees. The Luminate in his arms suddenly flashed bright patterns across its surface. Jack stopped, pressing his back against a tree trunk. Ahead, a bladeback crashed through the underbrush, its armored scales gleaming in the morning light. The beast was as big as a small car, with rows of sharp bone plates running down its spine. It hadn't seen them yet, but its head swung back and forth, tasting the air with its forked tongue. "Don't worry," Jack whispered to the Luminate. "These things have bad eyesight, if we stay still." The creature in his arms responded by dimming its glow until it was barely visible. Jack smiled. It understood. They waited as the bladeback moved past, its heavy tail leaving deep marks in the blue grass. Once the predator was gone, the Luminate's surface lit up with complex patterns. Jack watched, fascinated, as the lights seemed to form shapes and symbols. It was trying to communicate. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I don't understand. But we need to find a safe place first." The crystal being's lights pulsed in what seemed like frustration. Then it raised one of its arms, more like a branch of crystal, and pointed at Jack's comm unit. Jack pulled out the dead device. "It's not working. Something's blocking." The Luminate reached out with a crystalline finger and touched the comm unit. Suddenly, the device hummed to life, its screen glowing with new energy. Words appeared. "Thank you for helping me. I am called Dawn." Jack stared at the screen, then at the crystal being. "You can interface with our technology." "Yes. My kind processes data. Your device is simple. I am Dawn." "I'm Jack, a ranger here on Verde." He looked around, checking for predators. "Are you badly hurt? Those cracks in your crystal." "Damaged. Cannot walk. Crystal matrix needs time to heal." The words appeared faster now. "Being hunted. Bad people want my kind for our crystals. Shot my ship. Had to escape." A loud screech from above interrupted them. The Starwing was still circling, tracking them. Jack started moving again, faster now. "Why are they hunting you?" he asked, keeping his voice low. The comm unit lit up. "Our crystals store data. Some want to steal our knowledge. Break us for parts. Not many of my kind left now." Jack felt anger rise in his chest. He'd dealt with poachers before, but usually they hunted local wildlife. Hunting sentient beings for parts, that was a new kind of evil. A crash in the forest made them both freeze. Two bladebacks emerged from the trees ahead, blocking their path. Behind them, Jack heard the heavy breathing of a third. "Dawn," he whispered, "I need to put you down for a moment. Can you dim your light completely?" The Luminate's glow faded until she was almost invisible. Jack carefully set her behind a fallen log and readied his rifle. The bladebacks moved closer, their armored hides gleaming. The first beast charged. Jack rolled left, firing 3 shots at the soft spot under its jaw. The predator crashed down, sliding past him. The second bladeback roared and swung its spiked tail. Jack dove under the attack, firing up into the creature's belly. It screamed and stumbled, but the third one was already moving, jaws open wide. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of light burst from behind the log. Dawn had lit herself up like a miniature sun. The bladebacks reared back, their sensitive eyes overwhelmed. Jack didn't waste the chance. 3 more shots, and the last predator fell. He hurried back to Dawn, who had dimmed again. The comm unit lit up. "We help each other." "Yes," Jack smiled, carefully lifting her again. "We do, but we need to move. That light show will attract every predator for miles." "Trust you." Dawn's message was simple. "I'll get you somewhere safe," Jack promised. "But first, tell me more about these hunters. I need to know what we're up against. Dawn's lights pulsed steadily as they moved through the forest, and Jack's comm unit began filling with information. Above them, the Star Wing's cry was joined by others. The morning was far from over. The afternoon sun turned Verdi's purple forest into a maze of shadows. Jack's arms ached from carrying Dawn for the past 4 hours, but they couldn't stop yet. Her crystal body had grown warmer, and some of the smaller cracks were slowly healing. But she still couldn't walk. The comm unit in his pocket buzzed with a new message from Dawn. "You are tired. Need rest." "I'm fine," Jack said, though his burning muscles disagreed. "We need to keep moving. The ranger station is still 10 miles away. Hunters have ships. Will see us in open ground." She was right. The poachers would have scanners, and Dawn's crystal body gave off a unique energy signature. They needed a better plan than just running. Jack carefully set Dawn down near a fallen tree and stretched his arms. "Then we need to think smarter, not harder." He looked around the forest, his ranger's training kicking in. "Give me a few minutes." He moved quickly through the nearby area, gathering strong vines and flat pieces of bark from the local trees. Dawn watched, her crystals pulsing with curious patterns, as Jack began to build something. "What are you making?" appeared on the comm unit. "Something my grandfather taught me," Jack answered, weaving the vines together. He called it a travois. Native people on Earth used them to move heavy things through rough ground. He laid the bark pieces across the frame he'd made, creating a simple but strong sled. Dawn's lights flickered in what Jack was starting to recognize as approval. "Your species is very creative." "We had to be," Jack said, testing the strength of his creation. "Humans didn't evolve with many natural advantages. No claws, no armor, not very strong or fast. But we've got good brains and clever hands." He finished securing the last vine and carefully lifted Dawn onto the travois. "This will let me pull you instead of carry you. We can move faster, and I'll have my hands free if we run into trouble." The comm unit lit up. Smart, but Hunter's not only problem. Dawn's crystals flickered in a pattern that seemed worried. "Detected their communications. They have blocked all signals from this area. No one can call for help." Jack frowned. That explained why his comm unit wouldn't connect to Ranger control. "How many hunters are there?" 3 ships. 12 hunters. Advanced weapons." "Great," Jack muttered. He checked his rifle's charge. Only 40% power left after the fight with the bladebacks. He had 1 spare power cell, but that wouldn't last long against 12 armed poachers. A new sound made them both freeze, the whine of engines high above. Jack quickly pulled the travois under a thick cluster of trees. Dawn dimmed her glow to almost nothing as a sleek black ship passed overhead. "They're searching in a grid pattern," Jack whispered, watching the ship move away. "Professional, but they don't know this forest like I do." The comm unit glowed. "Why help me? Is dangerous for you?" Jack checked to make sure the ship was gone before replying. "Because it's right. And because that's what Rangers do. We protect." Dawn's crystals pulsed warmly. "My kind remembers those who help." Story of human ranger who risks life for stranger will be kept in crystal archives forever. "Let's survive first, then worry about stories," Jack said with a smile. He picked up the travois leads. "Ready?" "Ready. But careful. More predators coming." She was right. Jack could hear the distant sounds of animals moving through the forest, drawn by their earlier fight. The bladebacks might be dead, but Verdi had plenty of other hunters. They began moving again, Jack pulling the travois carefully through the undergrowth. This was slower than carrying Dawn, but he could keep it up much longer. They would need the endurance. "Tell me about the hunters," Jack said as they moved. "What weapons do they use? What are their tactics?" Dawn's information appeared on the comm unit as they traveled. Jack listened carefully, his mind already working on plans. They had 10 miles to go, through forest full of predators, while being hunted by armed poachers. But they had advantages too. Jack's knowledge of the land, Dawn's ability to interface with technology, and most importantly, the fact that the hunters would underestimate them. People always underestimated humans, thinking them primitive compared to more advanced species. Jack smiled grimly. Time to show these poachers why that was a mistake. The black ship passed overhead for the third time in an hour. Jack and Dawn lay motionless under a thick patch of hanging vines, the travois hidden beneath fallen leaves. Dawn's crystals were dimmed to their lowest glow, making her look almost like normal rocks in the forest shadows. The comm unit flickered with Dawn's message. "They are using thermal scanners, looking for my heat signature." Jack wiped sweat from his forehead. The afternoon heat was intense, but they couldn't move yet. "How long until your crystal structure heals enough to walk?" "Maybe 6 hours more. Healing faster than expected. Your planet's minerals help." A series of sharp cracks echoed through the forest. Jack tensed, but it wasn't gunfire, just the local ground burrowers breaking through roots in their evening hunt. Still, the noise made him nervous. Every sound could give away their position. "Tell me more about your people," Jack whispered, keeping watch. "Why do the hunters want your crystals so badly?" Dawn's lights pulsed softly as she answered through the comm. "My kind stores knowledge in our crystal structure, not just data. Living memories, experiences, feelings. Each crystal tells many stories. Hunters break crystals, try to read memories, but process kills us." Jack felt anger rise again. "That's horrible. How many of your people have they taken?" "Too many. I carry memories of 5 lost ones. Was taking proof to authorities when they attacked my ship. That explained why these hunters were so determined." Dawn wasn't just a random target. She was carrying evidence that could bring down their entire operation. A new sound made Jack freeze. Footsteps. Heavy boots on forest ground. Trying to be quiet, but not quiet enough for his trained ears. The hunters had started searching on foot. 3 of them, he breathed, barely moving his lips. Coming from the north. Dawn's message appeared. "Can sense their weapons. Energy guns, shock nets, crystal scanners." Jack slowly reached for his rifle, careful not to make any sudden movements. The footsteps were getting closer. Through gaps in the vines, he could see armored figures moving between the trees, weapons ready. One of the hunters stopped barely 20 feet from their hiding spot. He held up a scanning device that hummed softly. "Getting weird readings here," he called to his companions. "Could be crystal energy, but it's mixed with local mineral signatures." "Check it," another hunter replied. "The boss wants that memory crystal found before nightfall." The first hunter started walking toward their hiding spot. Jack's finger tensed on his rifle trigger. If he fired, the shot would give away their position to every hunter in the area. If he didn't. Suddenly, the ground erupted 30 feet away. A massive ground burrower, disturbed by the hunter's movement, burst from its den. The creature was like a huge armored worm, its segments covered in hard plates, mouth full of grinding teeth. The hunters spun toward the threat, firing their energy weapons. The ground burrower's armor sparked as the shots hit, making it angrier. It lunged at the nearest hunter, who dove away with a shout. "Move," Jack whispered, grabbing the travoid leads. While the hunters were distracted, they slipped away through the undergrowth. Dawn kept her glow dimmed, and Jack stayed low, using every bit of cover. Behind them, they heard more shots and shouting as the ground burrower caused chaos among the hunters. Jack couldn't help grinning. Verde's wildlife might be dangerous, but sometimes that worked in their favor. When they were half a mile away, Dawn's lights brightened slightly. The comm unit displayed. "You knew that creature was there." "Saw its burrow marks earlier," Jack confirmed. "Ground burrowers are territorial. Any vibration near their den sets them off. Figured those hunters stomping around would wake it up eventually." Clever, using local knowledge against advanced technology. "That's the human way," Jack said, checking their surroundings before moving on. "We learn to use whatever advantages we can find." The sun was starting to set, painting Verity's purple forests in deep red light. Night would bring new dangers and new opportunities. Jack began planning their next move as they traveled. The hunters had ships and weapons and scanners, but he had something better. A forest full of deadly creatures, years of ranger experience, and a determination to protect his new friend that no scanner could measure. Night on Verity turned the purple forest black. The three moons overhead cast strange shadows through the trees, and the air filled with the calls of nocturnal creatures. Jack pulled the travois carefully, every step planned and quiet. Dawn's crystals glowed just bright enough to light the path ahead, like a gentle blue torch. Energy levels in your weapon are low. Dawn's message appeared on the comm unit. Only 15% power remaining. Jack nodded. The spare power cell would give him one more full charge. But that was it. We're still 4 miles from the ranger station. How's your healing coming along? Better. Crystal matrix at 70% repair. But Dawn's lights flickered with concern. Large predator following us. Can sense heat signature moving parallel to our path. Jack didn't need Dawn's sensors to know she was right. He'd been hearing the creature for the last 10 minutes. Something big, moving quietly through the darkness to their left. The way it stalked them reminded him of the night hunters, Verity's most dangerous nocturnal predators. Jack, Dawn's message was urgent. Second heat signature detected. Right side. They are coordinating. Night hunters, Jack whispered. They hunt in pairs. One drives prey toward the other. He looked around quickly, evaluating options. The trees were too smooth to climb, and running would just trigger the predator's chase instinct. Dawn's crystals pulsed rapidly. Hunters' ships also approaching. 3 minutes until they are in scanner range. Trapped between alien poachers and deadly predators, Jack smiled grimly. Just another day on Verity. He carefully set down the travois, leads, and reached into his belt pouch. Can you boost the power of my comm unit? He asked Dawn. Yes, but why? All signals are blocked. Not looking to send a signal. Jack pulled out his spare power cell. I need you to overcharge it. Dawn's lights flickered in understanding. Her crystal finger touched the power cell, and it began to hum with growing energy. Dangerous. Cell may explode. That's the idea. Jack heard the night hunters moving closer. They were nearly in position for their attack. Above, the whine of ship engines grew louder. The power cell was glowing now, almost too hot to hold. Jack waited until he heard the first night hunter gather itself to pounce, then threw the cell hard into the trees to their left. The overcharged cell exploded in a burst of blue energy. The flash and bang caught the first night hunter mid-leap. The creature screamed, a sound Jack had never heard one make before, and crashed through the underbrush. Its hunting partner, confused by the explosion and its companion's cry, broke from cover on their right. In the moonlight, Jack got a clear look at it. 12 feet of sleek black scales and curved claws, with eyes that glowed red in the dark. Jack fired his rifle, not at the creature, but at the ground in front of it. The blast kicked up dirt and sparks, making the night hunter back away with a snarl. Above them, the hunters' ships were closing in fast. Hold tight, Jack told Dawn, grabbing the travois leads. The moment both night hunters were disrupted, he ran. Not away from the predators, but straight between them, pulling Dawn's sled through their hunting ground. The night hunters, their coordinated attack ruined, their night vision shocked by the explosion and weapons fire, couldn't adjust fast enough. By the time they recovered, Jack and Dawn had disappeared into the deeper forest. They ran for 10 minutes before Jack had to slow down, his breath coming in hard gasps. The comm unit lit up with Dawn's message. Impressive strategy. Used predators' hunting pattern against them. Also blocked hunters' thermal scans with power cell explosion. Sometimes, Jack panted, the best move is the one nobody expects. Those night hunters won't hunt together again tonight, and the poachers' scanners will need time to reset after that energy surge. My people study tactics for centuries. But humans, You create new solutions in moments. Jack checked his rifle's charge, down to 10% now. We have to. Usually don't get centuries to think about it. He looked up through the canopy, checking their direction by the moons. 3 miles to the ranger station. Think you can boost my last power cell too? Dawn's crystals pulsed with what Jack now recognized as determination. Yes. And crystal matrix now at 80%. We'll walk soon. Good, Jack smiled. Because I have a feeling those hunters aren't done with us yet. The forest ahead was dark, but Dawn's gentle glow lit the way. Together, they moved on, human and crystal being, each step bringing them closer to safety, or to their next challenge. The first rays of morning sun found Jack and Dawn trapped. Ahead of them, a massive cliff rose straight up into the purple sky. Behind them, the sounds of the hunters grew closer, boots crushing undergrowth, scanners beeping, and voices calling to each other. No way around, Jack said, checking both directions along the cliff face. Would take hours to reach either end. Dawn stood beside him, finally able to walk, though her crystal form still showed cracks. Her message appeared on the comm unit. My fault. Hunters will kill you to get to me. Should surrender myself. Not happening. Jack checked his rifle's charge. The last power cell Dawn had boosted was at 50%. He looked up the cliff face, then at the dense forest behind them. A plan began forming in his mind. How good are you at climbing? Crystal structure still fragile. Cannot climb well. Then we don't climb. Jack pointed to a narrow ledge about 20 feet up the cliff. We just need to get you up there. I have an idea, but you'll have to trust me. Dawn's crystals pulsed with blue light. I trust you. Jack quickly gathered vines and began weaving them together, just as he had for the travois. But this time, he made a simple harness. The hunters think we're desperate, running scared. Let's show them why cornering a human is a bad idea. He worked fast, explaining his plan to Dawn as he wove. Her crystals flickered with concern at parts of it, but she didn't object. Above them, one of the hunting ships passed overhead, scanners sweeping the area. Found them, a voice shouted from the forest. By the cliff. Jack finished the harness and quickly helped Dawn into it. Remember, wait for my signal. No matter what happens, don't move until then. Using the last of their time, Jack ran through the nearby area, setting up his preparations. Dawn watched from the cliff base as he worked, her crystal form glowing with worried patterns. The hunters emerged from the trees just as Jack finished. 12 armored figures with energy rifles and crystal scanners, spreading out in a half circle to trap them against the cliff. Nowhere left to run, Ranger, their leader called out. Hand over the crystal being, and we'll let you walk away. Jack stood in front of Dawn, rifle held loose but ready. Funny. I was about to offer you the same deal. Leave now, and I won't have to hurt you. The hunters laughed. Their leader raised his rifle. You're outnumbered 12-1. Your weapon's nearly dead. What do you think you can do? Jack smiled. I can teach you something about humans. He fired his rifle, not at the hunters, but at a massive purple tree he partially cut through earlier. The blast severed the last of its trunk. The tree fell with a thunderous crash, forcing 3 hunters to dive away. But that was just the start. Its fall triggered a line of other weakened trees Jack had prepared, each falling into the next like massive dominoes. Chaos erupted as the hunters scattered to avoid being crushed. Jack spun and fired 3 quick shots, cutting the vines holding back a cluster of giant hanging fruits he'd gathered. The fruits burst when they hit the ground, releasing a sticky sap that trapped 2 more hunters. Kill him, the leader shouted, but Jack was already moving. He ran straight at them, firing his last few shots to force them to take cover. The hunters, expecting him to retreat, were thrown off by the aggressive charge. In the confusion, none of them noticed the thin vines he'd stretched across the ground. 3 more hunters went down, tangled in the simple traps. Jack reached the pre-cut vine he'd prepared and yanked it hard. A deadfall of branches crashed down, driving the remaining hunters back toward the forest, and right into the territory of the ground burrowers he'd agitated earlier. The forest erupted as the massive worm-like creatures burst from their dens, driving the hunters into further chaos. Jack used the distraction to race back to Dawn. His rifle was dead now, but the hunters were scattered, half of them trapped or injured. "Ready?" he asked, grabbing the vine harness he'd secured earlier. Dawn's crystals pulsed with amazement. "Ready." Jack pulled hard on the vine running through a branch above them. The counterweight he'd set up dropped, and Dawn was yanked smoothly up to the ledge. Safe above, she quickly pulled up the vine to hide their method. The hunter leader emerged from the chaos, face furious as he saw Dawn beyond his reach. "You primitive fool. You think this changes anything? We have ships, we have." His voice cut off as a familiar screech filled the air. Jack grinned. Right on time. The Starwings, attracted by all the noise and movement, had arrived for their morning hunt. "Let me teach you one last thing about humans," Jack called up to the trapped hunters. "We don't need fancy technology. We just need to understand how everything around us works, and how to make it work for us." The first Starwing dove from the clouds, and the real chaos began. The ranger station's medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment. Dawn sat on an examination table, her crystal form glowing steadily as the healing unit helped repair her remaining cracks. Jack stood nearby, his arms crossed, watching the sunrise through the window. 3 days had passed since their stand at the cliff. The Starwings had scattered the hunters, and ranger reinforcements had arrived soon after, responding to the emergency beacon Jack had finally been able to activate. The poachers' ships had been caught trying to escape the planet's atmosphere by the Ranger Orbital Patrol. Final report came in, Jack said, checking his newly repaired comm unit. "They found all the hunter bases you told us about. 37 of your people rescued. The whole crystal poaching ring is finished." Dawn's lights pulsed with joy as she sent her message. "Because you chose to help one stranger. My people were right about humans all along." "What do you mean?" "In our crystal archives, we have stories. Tales of a strange species that looks simple but surprises everyone. Humans are called the unexpected ones in our oldest memories." Jack laughed. "We get that a lot. Other species look at us and see primitive beings. No natural weapons, no advanced built-in abilities. Just these." He held up his hands. "But those hands build things no one expects," Dawn's message continued. "That mind sees solutions others miss. You could have left me at the crash. Could have given up at any time. Instead, you used everything around you, trees, vines, predators, even gravity, to protect me." A soft chime indicated the healing unit had finished its work. Dawn stood, her crystal form now completely repaired, glowing with bright, healthy light. She walked to Jack and placed a crystalline hand on his arm. The comm unit displayed, "My people want to make you an offer. We need guardians who understand how to protect us without advanced technology, who can think in ways our enemies cannot predict. Will you accept a position as chief of security for our main crystal archive?" Jack looked surprised. "Me? But I'm just a ranger, who did what our best security forces could not. Protected one of us against impossible odds using only local materials and quick thinking. This is why humans fascinate us. You turn limitations into advantages." Through the window, they could see a sleek crystal ship landing. Dawn's people had sent transport to take her home. But now they weren't just coming for her. "The archive is on a forest world, much like Verde," Dawn's message continued. "We would welcome your expertise, your human touch." Jack looked around the ranger station that had been his home for 5 years. Then he smiled. "Well, I did just prove that primitive human tricks work pretty well against high-tech troubles. And someone needs to teach your security teams how to use the environment to their advantage." Dawn's crystals pulsed with happiness. "You will come." "On one condition," Jack said, picking up his old rifle. "I get to keep using this instead of those fancy energy weapons your people have." Sometimes the old ways work best. Agreed. Though you must tell the story of how you used it to defeat 12 hunters. It will be stored in our crystal archives forever. The rifle didn't defeat them, Jack corrected as they walked toward the landing crystal ship. Knowledge did. Understanding the forest, the predators, how everything works together. That's the real human strength. We learn, we adapt, we use what we have. Dawn's final message of the morning glowed on the comm. And that is why you make the best protectors. Because you see value in everything, even things others think are primitive or useless. The crystal ship's door opened with a soft chime. Inside, other luminates waited, their crystal forms glowing with welcome. Jack took one last look at Verity's purple forest, where his greatest adventure had begun with a simple choice to help a stranger. Then he stepped into the ship, ready for his next challenge. After all, that's what humans did best. Adapt, protect, and surprise everyone with what they could achieve with simple tools and clever minds. Behind them, the morning sun turned Verity's purple trees to gold, and somewhere in the forest, a starwing's cry echoed like a farewell salute to the human who had proven that the simplest solutions were often the strongest.